Hey, Edwin Canistracci here. You knew this was coming. You knew this was coming because I'm a huge Cheap Trick fan. And just like a couple months ago, I did this really big Rankorama, the Cheap Trick Rankorama, where I ranked and reviewed every studio album, excluding the Christmas album, from Cheap Trick. That's the problem when a band is awesomely prolific like Cheap Trick. You feel like you're doing like a definitive ranking of all their albums, and then 2 months later there's another album, so that blows that ranking. Now it's obsolete. Now it needs to be updated. Well, rather than doing all that again, just remember everything I said then, and then just add what I'm saying now about this album to that. And I'll even tell you where I put it in the ranking, because I don't want to have to do the ranking again, because that's a lot of work, and life is short. And there's a lot of other bands and artists I haven't even talked about yet, which I would love to talk about. But I'm happy to talk about Cheap Trick. Of course, people are curious what I think of the new album, so I'm going to tell you. I got it yesterday, downloaded it, got it downloaded from the iTunes, Apple Store, whatever they call it these days. I still call it iTunes. So I got it from iTunes. A couple of the songs had already been released, and I've had them in my library for a while now too. And I'm gonna tell you what I think of this whole goddamn album. Headline is, I like it, and I think it's good. I think it's good. I don't know if I'd go so far to say very good, but every time I've listened to it, I liked it more than the last time. So it's a grower. So it's quite possible I will think it's very good by this evening. All right. But right now I'm saying it's a good album, and it's interesting because in this new age now with downloads and stuff, you kind of get the album to a degree spoiled for you, because they do that thing they release the singles, like months before, like one drops on the internet and you can download it, then another one, and you pre-order the album, and you already kind of have a incomplete version of the album in your music library. I still don't know entirely how I feel about that. Now, yes, I could resist the temptation and simply not download these songs, but in many ways, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm a weak man. When an artist I love has a new song, even though I'm like, I should kind of wait until the whole album's out, I can't help myself, and I download it, and there you go, and I got it ready. And so I've already lived with a couple of these songs. And sometimes, if an album is really next level great, in my opinion, like Judas Priest's Firepower or AC/DC's Power Up, where every song is great on that album, then it doesn't really ruin the album. But when it's an album which I would say closer on this level, when the album's just good, it does take a little bit away from your first listening. If I hadn't already heard Boys and Girls and Rock and Roll and Light Up the Fire, which are my two favorite tracks on the album, I feel like this album would have had a larger impact on me upon first listen. That being said, if the album's good enough, it should hold regardless. And I do really like this album, but I do think the fact that I heard those two songs already, and Light Up the Fire, I'd heard it down for a couple months. Because of that, when I first heard it, there was a little tinge of disappointment, just a little tinge. But then the second time I listened to it, that tinge started to go away a little bit. And then by the third time, I was just listening to it just as an album, on its own merits. And by the fourth and fifth time today, I listened to it 2 more times today, I was like, nah, this album's good. This album's good, borderline very good. And right now, if I was to put this in my Cheap Trick ranking, I would put it right behind the last album. We're all right. 2017's We're All Right. And if you recall from that video, I'm a big fan of that album. I think that album's very good, borderline great. And that was and still is, my favorite Cheap Trick album post 97. So saying this album's not as good as that album is not really a dig on this album, because I have a really high opinion of We're All Right. And I don't just like that album more because it's more hard rocking. It's a heavier album. So people might think, oh, well, you like that album better because it's heavier. Hey, I love heavy music, but I love all kinds of music. And that's not why I think that album's still a little bit better than this album. I just think song for song, it's a little stronger. I just think it has better songs overall. But there are definitely a handful of songs that give the songs on that album a run for its money. And that album broke my top 10. That was my 10th favorite Cheap Trick album. So right now, after 2 days, I'd say this is my 11th favorite Cheap Trick album. I put it right above a Special One, which is one I like more than a lot of people, But I like that album. I think that's a good album. And this album's actually very similar to that album. So I think depending on how much you like Special One might dictate how much you like this album, because they're both very eclectic. They're eclectic albums. Both eclectic albums that kind of show both the pop leanings, the power pop leanings, and the harder stuff. And it's all kind of mixed together. And even a little kind of quasi-modern psychedelic elements, just like that album. So I feel like if you like Special One, you'll like this album. If you didn't like that one, then this might not be one of your favorite Cheap Trick albums. I also think it kind of calls to mind, and really for the first time since the 80s, kind of mid-80s Cheap Trick. And it's not just because of that checkerboard album cover. There's a little bit of a kind of Next Position Please, Standing on the Edge, and The Doctor kind of feel at times with a couple of these songs, which I'll explain when we get into each songs. But there's a little bit of that experimental mid-80s side. There's a little bit of that mid-80s vibe on some of these songs, which you don't hear too much in modern Cheap Trick. And that's the thing too, like when you're getting a Cheap Trick album, it's going to sound like Cheap Trick more or less. But what Cheap Trick sounds like could be a lot of things, because Cheap Trick is a very eclectic band that's had different albums with different vibes. Cheap Trick, is it going to be like a darker Cheap Trick album, like the first one, or 1997? Is it going to be a more like an In Color kind of, or Next Position Please kind of power pop album? Or is it going to be kind of a ballsy, hard rockin' kind of album, a little more like Dream Police or 101, or like the last one, We're All Right, So which Cheap Trick is this going to be? And like I said, it's eclectic Cheap Trick. You get a little bit of all the Cheap Tricks in it. As always, there's a lot of Beatles influence, and it's a little like, this is kind of like the White Album, where there's different shades. Like you'll have like on the White Album, there'll be pop songs and acoustic songs right next to really heavy songs, and this does that. And I love it. I love when albums do that. So if you're into eclectic Cheap Trick, then this might be another album you'll be into. It starts off with the first song that was released. Wow, I feel like it was almost, what was it, like 2 years ago? It was a while. It was before COVID, I remember. The Summer Looks Good on You. The Summer Looks Good on You. I remember when I first heard this song, I thought, it's all right. It's not great. It's not one of their best songs. And I gotta say, I still feel that way. This is probably the weakest song on the album. So there you go, the weakest song on the album. And not only is it the first single, it's the opening track. So it's all right. It's like, I don't hate the song. It's an all right song. And it in some ways you could say, hey, it's good. The album only gets better and better from here, from the first song. But it's an all right song. By Cheap Trick standards, this is just all right. It's nothing really special, and they've definitely had better openers in the past. But, it's a nice melody, and, the production. We'll talk about the production after I go song by song. Second song. I see a lot of people like this one. Quit Waking Me Up. A lot of people seem to be digging this one. Me? Probably my second least favorite song on the album. So this album's not really starting off. I mean, it's all right. And this is one of the songs that reminds me a little of the mid-80s stuff, because it has like a corny keyboard horns. Those corny keyboard horns come on in the chorus, and it's like, that's a really catchy chorus, but man, those horns are kind of messing with it. I think it'd be much better without them. They just sound kind of cheesy to me. And that's a lot like a lot of their albums, like in mid-80s, you hear these great songs, but then there's like a cheesy keyboard line or something on it that kind of takes away from the song. And this is like that. It's kind of like, hey, they're going out of their way to sound a little like the 80s here. So they're ruining otherwise really catchy song. Even though I love the chorus on this and think it's catchy, another problem is I think it gets repeated too often. It gets a little redundant by the end. Even though it's a short song, it's only 3 minutes and 42 seconds, but I feel like that chorus got repeated one time too often. But it's all right. It's an all right little catchy pop song. But already I'm kind of thinking this is kind of limp compared to the last album, not just because it's not more hard rocking, but I just don't think the songs have a lot of meat to them. It's a little fluffy. And, Cheap Trick's been fluffy from time to time. But then things make a turn with the third track, I guess kind of the title track. Not technically, the album's called In Another World, and this song's simply Another World. Beautiful song. Beautiful song. It took me a couple listens for this song to really sink in, but this is a beautiful, atmospheric, lush, little pop rock masterpiece. It's really beautiful. I find it very moving. It's a beautiful song. Really atmospheric, haunting. I like the lyrics. I like the vibe. It's a really good song, and I like how what they do towards the end with the reprise, which we'll talk about when we get to reprise. Then we get to the fourth song. Man, I love this song, and this was one of the songs that was already released. Boys and Girls and Rock and Roll. Man, yeah, that's just funny. I remember when after The Summer Looks Good on You, I wasn't like so excited about the new album because I thought, oh, that doesn't sound so great. And then I heard the song Light Up the Fire, and oh man, I really loved that song. And I was like, oh wow, this is great. And I really loved the production and sound, everything. I'll talk more about that when I get to that song. But I started thinking, well, maybe this is going to be a good one. And then a couple of months after that, Boys and Girls and Rock and Roll came out, and I was like, hey, this could be one of the more hard rocking albums. This is going to maybe like the last one. This is really good. But there was the cover artwork, and I still remember that first single, and I was like, I don't know. And then it ended up, it was eclectic. It's an eclectic album. So, but in some ways that makes the rockers rock even more, So Boys and Girls and Rock and Roll, I love the sound of the guitar. Rick Nielsen's guitar work is great on it. It's like kind of serpentine, and it's got attitude. Love it. Robin's vocals. How does this guy still sound so good? So good at his age. Amazing. In a lot of ways, he's the anti-Paul Stanley, and that's great because not only does he care about making new music, his vocals aren't shot, no lip syncing required for Mr. Xander. He sounds awesome on this track, and man, this chorus, God, that's one of their catchiest choruses yet. And this is after decades and decades and decades of really catchy Cheap Trick choruses. I love the chorus. And Robin's his voice is soaring. It's a soaring rock and roll chorus. It's righteous and it's passionate and it's hot. I love it. So Boys and Girls and Rock and Roll, easily my second favorite song on the album. And I love it even more in the context of the album because after Another World, it just comes in and punches you in the face. In a good way. I love this song. One of their best songs they've ever done. So there you go. Wow. Wow. In 2021, Cheap Trick are still doing some of the best songs they've ever done. Pretty impressive. After that, we got The Party. Hey, I like The Party. At first, this was one of the songs I didn't know how I felt about this song at first. But after listening to it, and especially today, it really clicked. And this is a song that really sounds kind of like their Gonzo mid-80s stuff, like one of the weirder tracks that would have been weird but still catchy tracks that would have been on like Next Position Please or even like The Doctor sans the synthesizers. It's kind of funky and it's kind of weird and in the chorus, and I love it. I love this track, and it doesn't wear out its welcome at 2 minutes and 54 seconds. Just kind of a shot of gonzo catchy, like the song says, it's a party. It's like a little fucking crazy Cheap Trick party for just shy of 3 minutes. I love this song. Another really great song. Then we got Final Days. Mixed feelings about Final Days. I love the verses. When this song came on, I thought, hey, this might be my favorite song on the album. Dark and bluesy and sensual, and Robin's vocals sound great on the verses. Love the verses, and I thought this is like something that could have been on like their first album or 1997. It's this dark, kind of sinister sounding Cheap Trick. But then the chorus happens, and I gotta say, and I still think this, after listening to this album like 5 times now, I always feel a little let down by that chorus. And, choruses are like one of the things Cheap Trick does best, so it's kind of surprising actually. Whereas Boys and Girls and Rock and Roll starts off catchy and then gets even catchier, which is, I think, a chorus should be catchier than the verses. It should kind of build like you build, and then the chorus is kind of euphoric and awesome. This feels like a song that should totally do that, and it doesn't. The verses are much better than the chorus, and when the chorus comes, it's like, okay, that's a little weak, it's all right, but I'm just waiting to get to the verses again. But still, awesome verses. Love the guitar solo. Rick has great guitar solo on it, and it's not, I don't hate the chorus, it's just that I was expecting it to go someplace more awesome than it did. But maybe it'll grow on me. I don't know. Still hasn't, though, after 5 listens. Although, again, awesome verses and cool guitar solo. Then we get to my favorite song on the album, Light Up the Fire. Man, is this song great. This song, I remember when I first heard this, when the single was dropped, and man, I love the production, And Tom Peterson's bass is nice and high in the mix. I haven't heard him this high in the mix actually since the first album. It's great. It's a great bass line, great guitar work. This is the mean, down and dirty, sexy Cheap Trick that I love. It's like dark and sexy at the same time. I love this song, and every time I hear it, it's just better and better. It's a modern day Cheap Trick classic. One of their best songs. It could have been on their first album or 97 or any of their highlight albums, in my opinion. And it's just, the fact that this band at this age can do a song that's as hot as this, god damn it, man. I love this track. Oh shit, I skipped a track. Sorry. I skipped, still relatively new for me, this album. Okay, between Final Days and Light Up the Fire, I got so excited about Light Up the Fire, I jumped towards it, is a very understated and beautiful ballad called So It Goes. It's so understated, like the first 3 times I listened to this album, I was like, eh. But today, this is another song that really clicked for me. And I was like, God, that's really beautiful. It's just really just soft and gentle, like a leaf floating in a breeze. It's beautiful in its passing, it's transitory. It reminds me of a song that could be on one of Paul McCartney's later albums. It's just a really rich, beautiful little song, but very understated. And it only makes Light Up the Fire kick ass so much more. This is like that White Album shit where, where it starts, like you can have a soft song or a poppy song go right into a crazy heavy song. And I love it. I love the placements of this. I love that Light Up the Fire comes on right after So It Goes. And Light Up the Fire, man, what a great song. After that, we got Passing Through, another understated, lovely ballad. Again, took me a few listens for it to sink in, but now it's like, yeah, that's a really beautiful song, really nice. Nothing that's going to rock or change your world, but it's just another really pretty Cheap Trick song. They're good at writing these little pretty songs and nice lyrics, and I really like that song too. Here's Looking at You, rockin' track, kind of fast, kind of punk. Sounds a little like something that could have been on We're All Right. And hey, nothing wrong with that. I love that album, and this is great, and it's rocking, and it comes again after Passing Through. I think the sequencing is very good on this album. Then it goes into Another World Reprise, which is totally different from the first Another World, which was more of a kind of atmospheric pop ballad. This is a rocker, another rocker, and man, it cooks. I love it. This is might be my third or fourth favorite song on the album. I really love Another World Reprise. I love both Another Worlds, and I think they work well together, and I like how they sequenced them like bookends. But this song really kicks. Robin sounds great, and he does that cool over-the-top screaming at the end. He starts screaming like a nut, and it's great. And it's just like, God damn it, man, at your age, and you could be doing this kind of shit. Awesome. That's rock and roll. Robin Zander is rock and roll personified as a human being. I love this song, and I love his singing. It's all great. The band sounds great. Then I'll See You Again. A little curveball, and it's always, you always want Cheap Trick to throw you a little curveball at the end, and this is the Cheap Trick curveball towards the end. It's another I'd say kind of atmospheric pop ballad, but sounds a little different for them. It has a little more of a, almost I'd say Beach Boys kind of, or Lindsey Buckingham kind of vibe to it. It's the band's all harmonizing. In fact, I can't really, it doesn't sound like Robin's the lead vocal on it. Is that Tom Peterson? I'm not sure, but it sounds, you hear like 3 or 4 very distinct voices. So it sounds like they're doing some kind of group harmony on it. And it's really haunting. And another thing I love about this album is all the songs are short. Really short, just kind of like the Beatles used to do it for the most part. The longest song on here is Final Days at 4 minutes and 39 seconds. That's the longest song. Most of these songs are all around the 3-minute mark. It leaves you wanting more. Personally, I think they should have ended the album here. I think this would have been a really effective way. And I don't know technically, is Gimme Some Truth, is that a bonus track? Doesn't say it's a bonus track, so maybe it's not. It ends with a cover of John Lennon's Gimme Some Truth. It's an all right cover. It's all right. It's not as good as the original. And in fact, I was a little disappointed. I was expecting a little more of an acerbic bite from Robin's vocals to match John Lennon's acerbic bite in the original, because I've heard Robin sing like that and be able to deliver songs with an acerbic bite in the past. But here, no, I don't. I think it feels a little weak compared to the original. It's all right. It's not bad. It's an all right cover, but I feel like this album should have end it with I'll See You Again. I feel that would have been an understated but still resonant ending. It would have kind of stayed with you, like that song, you know? And Give Me Some Truth kind of knocks you out of the whatever magic that song created. But it's all right. You know, I'm thinking of it as kind of a bonus track. But it's all right. But it's interesting because if you do count Give Me Some Truth as a proper track, so I'd say the weakest things about this album are the way it begins and the way it ends, you know, and it's too bad because everything in the middle is stellar. In fact, you know, I feel like if it had a stronger beginning and didn't end with Give Me Some Truth, maybe this would be better than the last album. I don't know. Maybe I'll feel that way, you know, later in a few weeks. But it's good. It's a good album. It's a good album that, save for a few of my criticisms, is very on the borderline of being very good. You know, I'm still working it out. I'm still processing because, you know, every time I listen to it, like I said, it grows on me more and more. I've heard some people too not like this production. Some people like it, some people don't. I would definitely say I prefer this album's production over the last album's production. It doesn't sound as brick-walled. I mean, some of that's in the mastering, but it's not just that. Even in the mixing, there's more separation. Like, I hear the different parts. Like I said, Tom's bass comes up higher and just all the little different parts, you know. I definitely prefer the production. It sounds more like a band. It sounds a little more organic. I feel there's a little more atmosphere to some of the songs. I would say, yeah, I think production-wise, this is their best sounding album since Special One. I like the sound of this album. I think it's a really good production. I like it. And obviously, I like a lot of the songs. And obviously, I have a high opinion of this album. And isn't it just, you know, it's a gift. You know, whether or not you think this album's just okay or just good or great, isn't it amazing that we're getting an either okay or good or great album from Cheap Trick in 2021? Man, I have so much respect for them. I love that they are still passionate about making music. Like a lot of these older bands, they're just going through the motions and they go out and they play the old songs and they don't care about being artists anymore. And Cheap Trick do care about being artists. You know, you can't take that away from them, regardless of what you think the quality of the albums are. And I think they're pretty damn good. But you can't take away from them that they still care. Because God knows they ain't making a lot of money on album sales anymore. No band makes money off of album sales. The fact that they do this, that they go and they create songs and they record them and put them out and they do it every couple years, it's amazing. I have so much respect for this band. I love this band. I hope they keep on making albums because, hey, I think these last two albums they've made are the best two albums they've done since the 90s. Wow. Last two albums, think about that. I think are the best two albums since the 90s. That's very impressive. So there you go. If you're a Cheap Trick fan, definitely get it. If you're not a Cheap Trick fan, you ain't watching this video, so fuck off. Anyway, so there you go. In another world, Cheap Trick, they're still doing it. They're still delivering the goods, in my opinion. And who knows, this might break my top 10 in a few days. Or maybe not. Even if it's just number 11, that's not bad. That's not bad for a band that's been around for this long, for various decades now, in 2021 to release an album that I rank at number 11. That's not too bad. Not too bad at all. So there you go. There's my In Another World review. Cheers.